open up with Grand Canyon University, the Antelopes, a team that both Arizona and Oklahoma State played during this most recent baseball season. So uh, maybe he has a little bit better feel for that. But we're going to try and get an advanced scouting report because what we're hoping is the Cowboys will take care of the Gauchos, and then at 9 o'clock on Saturday, that Catbird game, the winners bracket game, the one that gives you control of the regional, will be between the Cowboys and the Wildcats. Brody joins us now. Brody, how are you? And thanks for being on.
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Robert. How are you doing?
Doing good. I wish I was getting to make the trip. I do football sidelines on the Cowboy Radio Network, and I fill in sometimes for Rex Holt. You'll see Rex and the Chief, the only all Native American broadcast team in college baseball, and they're pretty funny guys. You'll enjoy meeting both Rex Holt and Matt the Chief Davis coming up this week in Tucson. But I want to start with something that was hit on in the selection show. Kyle Peterson from ESPN mentioned at the end of the show when they were talking about sleeper teams. He mentioned Oklahoma State being a team a second seed that's kind of coming around at the right time and getting healthy. And then he talked about how the Cowboys might really match up well with High Corbett Field, the home of the Arizona Wildcats. Tell me a little bit about High Corbett. I know it's been a spring training home at one time. In fact, Matt Holliday, Josh's brother, who played in the big leagues and was pretty good, spent some time there, I think, when he was with the Rockies. But tell us a little bit about High Corbett because it's got its own personality, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it really does. I mean, High Corbett is a pretty, I'd say in terms of Tucson baseball, it's a magical place because of that history. You know, it's had minor league baseball. It had the spring training games when they were hosted down here in Tucson. So it's fun because it has that professional atmosphere. But then when you put the historical, team and program like Arizona baseball in it, it really gives a good feel. And it's huge, not to mention it is hard to hit home runs in there, which gives Arizona some good training when they go to ballparks with a little bit smaller dimensions in it. But it's a fun time. And lately down here in Tucson, like most places now, are finally getting back to 100% capacity allowed. So the atmosphere has been really good. Tucson is a baseball town, so it's been awesome. And yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, there's just been some good stories, some great players coming through High Corbett. And that's one great thing we saw in the final series of the regular season. Arizona played Dixie State, and with that 100% capacity and whatnot, I mean, the season started with no fans at all, and you could tell how the players kind of feed off of it. And I think with the regionals, even though obviously Arizona got the home field advantage like they wanted, Oklahoma State travels well. GCU is in the state. There's going to be fans, from all over coming in. And I think it's going to create a really, really special atmosphere, especially considering the year that we've all had.
And you mentioned it's really big. I'm going to guess that Coach Johnson builds his team around that, around that yard. And just looking at the dimensions, anytime you see a shorter center field fence and deeper fence in the alleys, you realize that's a big, expansive outfield. And I'm going to guess that Arizona defensively, especially in the outfield, runs pretty well.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Defense is a specialty for this team. Dante Williams out at center. He is one of the fastest guys in the Pac-12, if not, the nation. Don't quite know his 40 time or anything, but he's Arizona's leadoff guy, and he is just phenomenal out in center field. He's been making highlight plays all season long. I was kind of surprised we didn't get one out of them in that final series against Dixie State. But out in right field, it's Ryan Holgate, who's also a pretty quick guy. In left field lately has been shifting around. That's been the one position I'm curious to see what Coach Jay Johnson goes with going into the regionals. But I mean, yeah, it's a challenge, and you see it from guys. They are tested out there, even the fastest. If they're not used to it, there is so much real estate to cover. You know, it goes out to 410 out in the corners, and even when it's a ball that you can't get to, it's hit out into the gaps. You know, just continuing to roll, it builds frustration out there for guys. But by the end of the regionals, we're going to find out who can take it and who can't, I suppose. But it makes it fun.
Well, and see, that's one thing. Oklahoma State with Caden Trinkle in center, and Cade Cabanis in right, and even McCusker in left field. McCusker's 6'7", 6'8", and so he probably takes a little longer to get started. But when he does, he takes big strides, and all three of those guys can kind of run it. And so that's maybe why Kyle Peterson may have made the statement he made. The other thing is Oklahoma State is typically a good home run hitting team, and I think they are again this year. But this has been a really good team about finding the gaps and getting a lot of doubles and moving around the bases a little bit. So this will be interesting. All right, what's the attitude in Arizona about the three teams that got sent in? Obviously, you guys know Grand Canyon well. We do too. In fact, I did those games for Rex early in the year when Grand Canyon came in and played at O'Brate Stadium. And then I guess the unknown a little bit is OSU's first opponent, UCSB. But what do you think the Arizona staff's thought is about who got sent into Tucson?
Yeah, no, I think there are some good challenges there because Oklahoma State, I feel like right now is in a little bit of a similar situation that Jay Johnson, Arizona, has been in the past few years before the 2021 season, because they're obviously a great program. Coach Holliday's done a great job there, and there's plenty of history. We saw Arizona match up with Oklahoma State in the College World Series back in 2016.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that, Arizona likes the familiarity, at least that it has with, who they'll be seeing in the dugout somewhat. Obviously, a few common players from those teams, even though most have moved on. And I think, Coach Johnson, Coach Holliday have a lot of respect for one another, and they know how much of a challenge it is. Even when Arizona isn't hosting in years prior, they're always a team that everyone knows has some solid guys, and they can come back, especially in postseason, back against the wall, and come out firing on all cylinders. And I think, Arizona, obviously the favorite, they're the seeded team coming out of Tucson, but Oklahoma State certainly has that opportunity, and Grand Canyon, even I think that with their win, it was at home up in Phoenix against Arizona earlier on in the season. They got the walk-off in extra innings. They're a solid ball club, winning the WAC tournament this past week. They are a solid ball club. They've got some great pitching. And yeah, UCSB is kind of that wild card that I'm interested to see how they do, because they're another opponent that Arizona and Oklahoma State both saw in 2016, and I think that they'll be solid. I still need to look into the scouting report on them, if I'm going to be honest, but they are the wild card going into it. All I know is it's some good programs here in Tucson, so I think it's going to be some must-watch, must-listen baseball.
Well, and I will tell you, because that's OSU's first-round opponent, they've got two really good starting pitchers. Michael McGreevy, a sophomore, it's a right-hander. Rodney Boone, that is a sophomore who's a left-hander. McGreevy is that typical pitcher that puts the ball in play, lets his defense rally around him, make good plays, throws a lot of strikes, but he throws strikes that batters, can get the ball on, not necessarily get all of. And then Boone, and that's the guy I think Oklahoma State will see because of the ballpark. Boone is a strikeout artist. He keeps the ball out of play, hits the corners, very meticulous. But you look at his ball strikeout ratio or walk strikeout ratio. He's struck out 117 and he's only walked 37. I can live with a 3+1 strikeout to walk ratio. So that's kind of what you're looking at there. And then they've got some guys that can hit the ball too. They'll be a sneaky good number 3 team in this deal. So now tell me a little bit about Arizona. Tell me, I already know that Dante Williams is the speed, and that who'd you say, Ryan Holgate, also in the outfield, very solid player.
Yes.
I look at the pitching, and I'm just looking at numbers. Solid, but not necessarily low ERAs. But I'm going to guess high Corbett is not the best ballpark in the world for ERAs.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I will tell you, just in years prior, Arizona has had some solid, really good ball clubs under Jay Johnson. We saw in 2016 making that run in the College World Series. But overall, there has been some years in there where they have really good offense and they've struggled in terms of pitching. But I've got to say, last year, Jay Johnson went out and made the hire of Nate Yeskie, the new pitching coach. And it was last season he came to Arizona within the conference. From within the conference, he came from Oregon State, where he did phenomenal things there. And he improved this pitching staff so much. And it's just shown throughout this season, and that's the reason they've been so highly ranked. They're a top 5 team in the nation. And I think that those high ERAs, I think you're right. The high Corbett and just Pac-12 baseball is hard to keep your ERA, super, super low. But the one thing is the starters, it's kind of late to say this, and it might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but there's been some, questions in terms of guys like the freshman TJ Nichols was starting out as Arizona's, could-be ace, who's now coming out of the bullpen, and he excels a lot better in the bullpen, but he's still a guy Arizona might decide to put out on the bump, depending on the situation, depending on who they end up playing. And we've seen the bullpen just fire rockets out there. Gil Luna, who's a guy that I remember calling a few games his freshman year, had big-time struggles, but he's made 10 appearances, in his past 10 appearances, he hasn't allowed a run. He's got close to 30 strikeouts. Preston Price, the senior, the 2 seniors on the entire roster are Preston Price and Vince Finelli, and they're 2 guys that come out of the bullpen, and that experience just really shows. And it's nice to have them as leaders in the bullpen, in the dugout, and they're going to come out. I mean, Preston Price, he's got, a breaking ball that can just really move, and it pairs nicely with his fastball. And you'll see it where there's going to be some creativeness from Nate Yeskie in the bullpen, and you'll get some guys that will come out, just for a batter, and then send guys out there for 4.5 innings after his starter was only out there for 2 or something. And that's some of the art of this Arizona baseball team that's so fun to watch. But in terms of other things you'll see from this roster, I think one guy that you really want to keep your eye on is Jacob Berry. He's a switch-hitting freshman, normally number 2 in the lineup, behind Dante Williams, and he can hit it. When he's a switch hitter, it's not like, he's a righty and he can hit bombs, lefty. It's like, okay, he can hit. It's both ways. He is a phenomenal hitter. He's normally playing designated hitter, if not somewhere in the infield. And he's a guy that's just he's going to produce some fireworks. It was on senior night against Dixie State. He had the walk-off RBI double that won the game and made it kind of a picture-perfect ending to the regular season as they celebrated the Pac-12, the outright Pac-12 championship after the game. And another guy to keep your eye on, Brandon Bossier, the first baseman. I think I don't have the statistic in front of me, but in his last 10 at-bats for Arizona last weekend, I'd say you had maybe, honestly, 9 base hits. He was just an on-base machine, not the fastest guy in the world, but still a steady, good first baseman who can hit. But, when you're the number 5 team in the nation, basically everyone can hit. They're really, really good, with a couple names there to keep an eye on.
Well, you just gave me a interesting situation here. Did you say Coach Yeski, Nate Yeski?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Pitching coach, associate head coach. Mm-hmm. He would have been the pitching coach at Oregon State when Marty Lees, the Cowboys associate head coach, who's the third base coach and kind of handles a lot of defense and responsibilities there. When he was at Oregon State, and they would have been together there in Corvallis, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
because those two play a big role.
Yeah, a little storyline there. That's one thing with bringing Yeski in, and Jay Johnson does such a good job. He came from the University of Nevada before arriving at Tucson, and he's got a lot of connections all over the country, and he's brought in a lot of guys on the staff as, even graduate assistants, assistant coaches, what have you. And throughout the season, that's always a storyline. It's who is Jay Johnson known or been on a staff with or hired or whatever. The wonderful Arizona baseball sports information director, Brett Gleason, always does a good job of connecting those dots for us in the game notes and whatnot. But it seems like Arizona always has a way of doing that, and there you go. There's the connection this time from Nate Yeski.
Well, yeah, a fun thing to keep track of for you guys if and when you play Oklahoma State. And I'm going to guess before this is over, the Cowboys and the Wildcats will see each other, if not once, a couple of times. Tag team first base coach, Robin Ventura and Matt Holliday. And the first guy will start out, and if they're scoring runs consistently in the game, he may do the entire game. And if not, the other guy comes in and relieves him. So you can kind of tell how the Cowboys feel about their offensive production by whether they're changing first base coaches or not. So a lot of times Robin gets the start and Matt is the guy that comes in if the runs aren't being pushed across. So that's something to watch for over in the first base coaching box.
Sure. Awesome. That's a cool little nugget. I'll be sure to keep an eye on that.
Not only that, I mean, Oklahoma State's got to be one of the only teams in college baseball that have 2 former Major League Baseball All-Stars on their coaching staff. One's a graduate assistant. Ventura's getting his degree finally, and then Matt Holliday is a volunteer coach. So that's kind of been fun for every team that's come in here this year to maybe get them on their pregame show. So, hey, Brody, I appreciate it. And again, thanks for the time and the background on the Wildcats and on High Corbett Field. And I wish we were heading out there because I bet it's nice and warm in Tucson right now. But do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Robert. It's been a pleasure, and some might say a little bit too warm, but I think we'll be a little bit more thankful for this than anything too cold. So thanks, Robert, and have a good one.
All right, appreciate it. Again, Brody Dryden, who is the voice of the